Welcome everyone to the 33rd annual conference. It started back in 1988 with 10 people in at Pendle Hill, a little farm in Pennsylvania, and they they started the organization back then. Shortly after that, they got nonprofit status. We're uh, a 501c3 nonprofit national organization, and we do have a few international members around the world. We are in our 33rd conference to start our 33rd year of successful operation. This is largely due to your financial support, and we appreciate all your financial support. Um, Normally, we have a conference where we all get together, but this year we've been forced to go virtual. So I hope you can appreciate this virtual conference. And as a side benefit, it may have bring some people to the conference that would have been unable to attend a physical conference. So I'm glad that some of you who are in remote locations or couldn't travel will be able to join us. I just want to introduce wellspouse.org, our website, wellspouse.org. If you're not a member, if you haven't made a $30 donation and would like to, please go to wellspouse.org. On the upper right-hand corner, you have two buttons, join and donate. So one is to join the organization, one you can make a donation. This year we have also in the upper right-hand corner of the website, we have the icons for our YouTube channel. And some of these presentations are going to be recorded and they're going to be on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to refer to them later. Okay, without further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Aaron Blight. Dr. Blight's topic is on framing the care experience. It's an opportunity to provide foundational support for caregivers. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Aaron Blight and thank him very much for being here and for being our keynote speaker. Dr. Blight.
Thank you, Bob. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. And Jerry, I'm going to try to share the screen right now. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I am usually an East Coast person, but I'm actually traveling today. I'm in the Mountain West and visiting my daughter in college. And I woke up bright and early to join you and to be a part of the conference. And I've been looking forward to this. I'm very honored to be with you today. And I'd like to thank Bob and Jerry and WellSpouse for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk about caregiving, which is something that is near and dear to my heart. So, like I said, I live out east, and been in our current home for about 12, 13 years. And down the street from us, a new development has started to come in. And we weren't expecting the new development, but there it is. And I'm seeing pictures like this, images like this all over the place down the street from me. Houses are being put up, and right now they're in kind of the framing stage of things. And you know, when you think about the frame of a house, you know, it's there, and when the house is complete, you don't necessarily think too much about the frame. You're inside and you do do your daily chores and your business in your home. But the frame is always there, and it's what's keeping everything together. And a frame can be a physical structure, but a frame can also be a way of thinking about something. So my talk today is about the framework of caregiving. And we're not really talking about a physical structure. We're talking about a way of thinking about caregiving. And I'd like to, point out that in caregiving, we spend so much time focused on the tasks of caregiving, the things that we have to do, the checklist, the needs of our loved one, that we don't really think about conceptually how caregiving is changing us, how it's changing our lives, our relationships. And that's what I want to talk about today, because when you put for caregiving in a framework like this, I think it opens the door to some learning that can happen and a greater understanding of what caregiving means in our lives and how we can do a better job as caregivers going forward. So today we're going to spend a good amount of time together, and we're not face to face, and so we're doing this virtually. And I'm going to introduce some thoughts and share some thoughts and stories with you today. And as we're talking, you're going to hear a lot of things, but you're also going to have thoughts that'll come into your mind and feelings that are going to come into your heart. And I would invite you to pay attention to those thoughts and feelings. This is more than just what you hear today, because those thoughts and feelings that come to you could be some inspiration that will help you understand how you can do a better job with your loved one. And I guess in this case, Bob, I don't need to say loved one. I can just say spouse, right? Because all of the caregivers here are spousal caregivers. I'm gonna assume that's the case.
That's the case, yes.
Yeah, well, usually when
Or
I'm talking
partnered.
to, what's that?
Or partnered.
Or partners, or
Yep.
partners. Good point. Yeah. Uh, when I'm talking about caregiving with folks, often it's all kinds of different relationships. But so I'm going to invite you to to focus on the thoughts in your mind, the feelings of your heart, in addition to what you hear. And there will be opportunities for me where I'll be asking you for some input in the presentation. I'd like to make this as interactive as possible during our time together. And beyond the direct interaction that we're having here during the meeting, I'd also invite you to share your thoughts and your feelings about what you've heard in social media. And this is kind of a little fun thing that we can do. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and they just set up a Facebook author page for me. I think there's like, I don't know, 7 people on it or something. But if you're so inclined and would like to share your thoughts or feelings about what you've heard today, I would love to hear that on social media. And I promise that I will respond as well, and maybe even like retweet what you said. So so please do that. So I'd like to share a little bit about me. Over 20 years ago, I was working at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Back then, it was actually called the Healthcare Financing Administration. I was in the federal Medicaid program, and I had a national leadership position in healthcare policy for elderly and disabled people. I was writing policy for elderly and disabled people. But I didn't really, if I'm being honest with you, I didn't really understand too much about what it meant to be elderly or disabled until something very significant happened in our family. This is my mother-in-law, and at 59 years old, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor the size of a golf ball. It was completely out of the blue, completely unexpected. She was given weeks to live, and they told us that she needed immediate brain surgery. And if she had the brain surgery, and if she survived the OR, then she might live 6 to 9 months. And so we were relatively young. My wife and I we had 3 small children, and we're kind of building our family at the time. And this just really was a devastating diagnosis for us. And my mother-in-law she received brain surgery at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. It was very cutting edge surgery at the time. I'll never forget what she looked like when she was discharged. They had shaved her head, and she had staples going up and around her skull like this. She looked like Frankenstein. She needed a place to recover from her brain surgery for a couple of weeks, and so she moved into our home. We really didn't think much about it because, it was like mom needed help and we're going to help her, of course. She was supposed to be there for a couple of weeks. She ended up living with us for a couple of years. She went through a second brain surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, all while she was living in our home. And my wife also became pregnant, and we had our 4th child while her mom was living with us. So this was a huge change for our family. My mother-in-law actually lived for 5.5 years after that original brain tumor diagnosis, but her mind was never the same. She was in a slow, steady cognitive decline for the rest of her life. So even after the cancer went into remission, she moved out of our home, but she really wasn't able to be fully independent. We were constantly going over there and helping her with the tasks of caregiving. Near the end of her life, and I guess about 4 or 5 months before she passed away, at a follow-up appointment with the doctor, they told my wife that her mother's cognitive decline could not be stopped. They didn't know what they could do to reverse or to stop the cognitive decline that she was experiencing. And we understood that with enough time, she was going to become basically a vegetable. But in a sense, it was a merciful thing that the cancer returned. And she decided to not have any treatment at that point. And she passed away of cancer before her mind had entirely disappeared. So near the end of her life, a hospice agency referred us to the Visiting Angels, a home care company, and they provided help with activities of daily living for 24/7 during the last couple of months of my mother-in-law's life, and they were a godsend for us. We wish that we had called them sooner. About a year after she passed away, I made a career change, and I left the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and became the owner of a home care company, just like the Visiting Angels. I became a franchise owner for Home Instead Senior Care, relocated my family to Winchester, Virginia. And I wanted to help families that were like mine, that had been experiencing caregiving challenges. And through my business, I was able to help thousands of families over the years. And I saw so many common challenges that people were facing in caregiving situations. And also during this time, I decided to go back to school. And I received my doctoral degree. And I'm not a doctor of medicine, just so everybody knows, I'm not a medical doctor. My doctoral degree is actually in learning. And I studied caregiving as a phenomenon of social science in connection with my doctoral degrees. So this one slide represents the years of my life spent studying caregiving. And the point that I was doing this was years after my mother-in-law had passed away. But it was really through the study of caregiving that I started to understand it on a deeper level. And so many of the challenges that I had personally with my mother-in-law when she was living with us were explained through the research and through the study of caregiving. I'm going to share some of that with you today with the hopes that it will benefit you as well. So then on August 1st, 2017, my life changed overnight. I had received an unsolicited offer to sell my home care company, and I was not planning on doing this. But after some soul searching and some prayer and some serious reflection, I decided that this was the right thing to do. And so August 1st, I sold my home care business, and then I kind of asked myself, well, what do I do now? Because I didn't really have a plan B. I was just going to continue with my home care company. And as a result of that, I started to think about my experiences in national healthcare policy as a family caregiver, owning a home care company, helping so many families like mine, and also my research in caregiving. And I realized that, I couldn't just put all that up on the shelf. I had to do something with it. And so as a result, I created Caregiving Kinetics, which is a way for me to help others in caregiving situations. And that has led to the production of a book. And I'm super excited to share this with you. This book was just released last week, and it's called When Caregiving Calls, Guidance as You Care for a Parent, Spouse, or Aging Relative. And as you can see here, Bob Mastro endorsed the book. And Bob, since you're on, could you read your endorsement for us?
Yes, I can. I can't see it, but I can remember it. No family caregiver should be without this book. In clear and concise chapters, it covers all the topics needed to understand the journey. And it provides a reference source which can be used again and again.
All right, thanks, Bob. So Bob was able to see the book. He was one of the early readers and was kind enough to share his thoughts. And I'm so honored that Bob endorsed the book. Do you have anything, Bob, that you'd like to say about the book?
Well, yeah, I think that as opposed to reading a novel or anything, this is a workbook. This is a book that you can go through the chapters and you can go back to them again and again as you are presented with new challenges. And that's the reason I said that it was so valuable. It's the kind of caregiving book that if you work with it, you can learn from it and you can improve your personal situation. Many of us feel overburdened or burnout or whatever. But in times of trouble, you can go back to the book, you can go back to the chapter that's appropriate for you, and you can rework it and gain some knowledge from it. So that's why I said no family caregiver should be without this book. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share with you a little bit more about the book as we go through today. But I would like to just point out to you a couple of things about it. One is that it's a very concise book. I did not want to write a long-winded book. Have you ever read one of those books where the author just goes on and on and on and doesn't say anything new? I don't really think this book is like that. It has 18 chapters. They're all fairly short, but they're very easy to understand, and they're very relatable. And after each chapter is a series of questions for reflection. And the questions for reflection are designed to invite you to think more deeply about what you just read and how it applies to your caregiving experience. And it's actually through the process of intentional reflection that we can understand our experiences better and figure out how we can improve things going forward and how we can change our lives. And this is where some of my doctoral degree in learning comes into play, because I've really tried to create something that allows the caregiver to learn from their experiences. And so I like Bob's description of it, the way that he talked about it. I think that's a very apt description of how the book can and should be used by family caregivers. A couple of just interesting points here, that data points that I think would be useful for you to appreciate about caregiving. Earlier this year, the AARP and the National Alliance for Caregiving released a new report, an update on caregiving in the United States. And the report estimates that as of 2020, and by the way, I think this is actually pre-COVID, this is before COVID, it was estimated that 53 million Americans were involved in caregiving in the past year. That is more than 1 in 5 of the adults in America. That's a huge number, isn't it? And those numbers are growing. That's an increase of almost 10 million from their past report during 2015. Another thing that I like to point out to people is the estimated economic impact of family caregiving. You know, family caregivers are the secret to our long-term care system in America. When you think about long-term care, you think about facilities, right? Senior living facilities, nursing homes. You think about Medicaid, Medicare, what you're paying out of pocket, and long-term care insurance. Well, the estimated economic value of unpaid family caregiving exceeds the economic impact of the entire long-term care industry combined. That's amazing. These numbers here are from 2013, and it was estimated back then that $450 billion was the value of unpaid economic caregiving, or unpaid family caregiving. Those numbers, I've seen estimates that go above 500 billion at this point in time. I just use the older data because I love this little graphic. It's very pretty. The World Health Organization, and by the way, I cannot see the right side of my screen. Let me see if I can, oh, there we go, okay. The World Health Organization said this about family caregiving. It said, caregiving should also be a concern for communities, governments, and society as a whole. However, the role of family caregivers is often neither supported nor properly acknowledged. So despite the enormous role that family caregivers have and the estimated economic impact of family caregiving, this is true. The family caregivers are often, they're not supported, they're not properly acknowledged in our healthcare delivery system. And if you're a family caregiver on this call today, you might recognize this. You might say, yeah, I can see how I may not get that much support or acknowledgement. I would also say that fortunately, those of you that are on this call know about WellSpouse and what a great organization it is that provides some support that you can definitely use. Oops, now that I shrunk that, I can't, I need to go back to this, okay. Okay. So let's get into the framework for caregiving. And again, it's a way to think about caregiving. I hope that these insights will be helpful to you, and a way of kind of remembering these ideas I came up with this framework using the letter R. So we're going to use R words entirely to describe the framework for caregiving. And we have 4 R words that talk about the social context of caregiving. And then I'm going to give you a couple more R words today. The first word in the framework of caregiving is roles. When you think about roles, roles are social positions that we occupy in the world. They're the hats that we wear, right? The hats that we wear. We often talk about, oh, if I were to put this hat on, I would say this, but if I put on my other hat, I'd say something else. But if you think about the different hats that you wear in your life, you wear a lot of hats. You might be a manager at the office. You might be a female. You might be a member of the Methodist Church. You might be a New Yorker. You might be a person who lives in New York, but actually is from Japan. I don't know. So, you have all of these different identities or hats that you wear. And just like you have these different roles in your life, caregiver is a role. Now, when you think about roles, I like to think about this using the analogy of the sociologist Irv Goffman. He wrote a book called The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, where he likened our lived experiences as if we were in a play, and we all have roles to play. And in a dramaturgical production or in a play, if caregiving was a play, the lead actor would be the care receiver. The spotlight is always on the lead actor, right? The care receiver. The script in the play of caregiving is written by the changing health conditions of the care receiver. The lines and everything that happens in this play is really dictated by what happens health-wise with the care receiver. The caregiver is a supporting actor. The spotlight is always on the care receiver, and the caregiver's role is to help, in the play and the progression of the story of the care receiver. But the spotlight really isn't on the caregiver. The script, the lines that the caregiver follows are also written in that same script, the conditions of the care receiver. The stage is the home, or let's say it's the facility. Now, if you think about caregiving this way, it opens up a little bit of understanding. And this is something that I really honestly didn't understand when my mother-in-law was living with us. You see, to be honest, I wanted to be the lead actor, or I wanted my immediate nuclear family to be the lead actors. My life at that time was focused on my wife, my children, me, but my mother-in-law wasn't really supposed to be the lead actor in our family's life, but that's what happened. And I struggled with that quite a bit over time. So I'd like to pause here for a minute and ask you a question. And because I'm sharing screen, Jerry, I cannot see the chat. Can you see the chat?
I can.
Jerry, you can?
I can, yes.
Okay. So here's what I'd like to ask you. And if you could maybe, think about this question and type in the chat what your answer would be. And I'll ask Jerry if you see some answers in the chat. If you could maybe just read those to the group, that would be wonderful. And so the question is, what would be the title if your caregiving experience was a play? What would be the title of your caregiving script? And if you want to answer a second question, how would you describe your role? So I'm just going to give you a minute to think about what would be the title of your caregiving script, and ask Jerry if you could just read that for us, what people say. Oh, I can see it now.
Can you see that? I was having problems with my headset.
I can see
Pushing
it.
this there's a mute button up here.
Okay.
Can you see that?
So Terry says, life in a pinball machine. Marion says, sudden impact. Richard says the title of his caregiving script would be I Did It My Way. Dolores, who knew, with lots of question marks. Nancy says her title would be the 36-hour day, and she's borrowing that title from the book, The 36-Hour Day, which is an excellent resource for caregivers. Carol says my title would be One Day at a Time because so many days are different. Very true, Carol. Rick says, loving you always. You know, I think about spousal caregiving, and that is, I mean, that's you, Rick, you almost brought tears to my eyes just reading that. Maida says, right now, in remission, caregiver. Wow. Diane says, how a natural caregiver, MFT scholastic counselor, became a real caregiver who has no idea what she is doing. Oh, Diane, that's so true, isn't it? I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. I got to make a note to remember. I want to talk about that in our next little phase. Even people who have professional training in caregivers struggle with the family caregiving role. He says the invisible roller coaster. Nancy says, until I can no longer give or receive hugs. Barry says, can I really do this, and do I want to? Suzanne, for the love of Ryan. Patty, the long goodbye. Maida, homemaker, breadwinner, maid. That's how you would describe your role, Maida. Homemaker, breadwinner, maid. Think about that. Here's a wife who is referred to her role as homemaker maid. Eileen, observer at a horror show. DBL, did I sign up for this? Lawrence, the land of the lost. Suzanne, life with SOS, what my husband calls his disease, same old, you know what, that last
Stuff.
Stuff. Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Tom says, always alert. Oops, we have so many. Always alert and at the beck and call of my wife's needs. Letitia, caring for those around me without stepping in the spotlight. So Letitia, that one makes me, it sounds like you're caring for more than one person. So it sounds like maybe it's your spouse, but also there's other people who you are caring for at the same time. Lisa, the best laid plans, ... Amy says, these make me laugh and cry at the same time. So I think that's maybe not the title of your script, but just hearing what everybody else is saying could be the title of the script. And that's, yes, you're exactly right. Everybody can relate to these. There's some humor in them, but also just this deep sadness, right? Maida says, my surname and first name are the wrong, oh, Margaret, okay. Margaret, it's Margaret Maida. Surname and first name are the wrong way around. Sorry, Margaret. Linda, eclipsed. Suzanne, playing a caregiver at work and play one at home. Wow, these are so good. Nancy says, banker, chauffeur, cook, laundress, maid, servant, back rubber, advocate, etc., etc. Edna, the making of Edna, love and service for all. Letitia, yes. Oh yes, so Letitia, you're serving more than one person as a caregiver. Suzanne, suffering and grieving in silence. Dolores, caregiving, challenges and opportunities. Anna still here. All right, I'll just read a couple more and then we're going to keep going. Diane says, financial coordinator, evil stepmother, caring for mom, dad, and now husband, help from extensive board and care. Dolores, caregiving challenges and opportunities. Diane says the word advocate says it all. Thank you so much for those titles. You know, just you've summed up life as a caregiver. And yes, you can laugh and cry at the same time as you hear those, as you read those. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And we're going to be learning from each other today. I'm going to stop at different points and ask you a few more questions like this. And I really appreciate your input because it allows all of us to learn. You know, I'm not like the source of all information here. I'm just the guy that was asked to speak today, and I appreciate learning from you as we're going through it. So the next R in our word in the framework for caregiving is relationships. And if you think about human relationships, every human relationship is unique. Every relationship is unique. Some relationships are just embedded and infused with meaning, especially family relationships. Each relationship has its own unique properties. So if you think about how you interact with, let's say, your boss at work, you're probably a very different person than you are with your spouse, right? So like in my career, I happen to kind of be in a lot of boss-like roles, but I like to say that my wife is the boss at home, right? I'm not the boss. She's the boss. And so, you know, in that sense, my relationship with my wife is very unique and very different from any other relationship that I have in the world. But here's something very important that I want to share with you, and I think all of you probably know this, but caregiving changes relationships, especially when you're involved in a historic family relationship. And I'm going to share with you family caregiver identity theory today. And this is something that I came across in my doctoral studies, and it fundamentally changed the way that I understood the caregiving experience. And it came from two applied gerontologists, Rhonda Montgomery and Carl Kozlowski, who spent their careers studying family caregivers. And before I present the theory, I'd like to share with you what Rhonda Montgomery said about the book. Rhonda was also a, okay, I can't read the quote when the things are on there. Okay. Rhonda was also an early reader of the book. And sorry guys, there we go. And this is what Rhonda said. She said, this easy to read book provides family caregivers with valuable insights, guidance, and affirmation that reflect empathy and respect for their role. The book's poignant stories will help family caregivers and the professionals and other family members who support them. So Montgomery and Kozlowski, I'm going to go back to where I can see you guys. Okay. They described, after studying family caregivers for 30 some years, their research included some 20,000 different caregiving dyads, dyad being the caregiver and the care receiver. They concluded that caregiving is really defined by a series of role-based transitions that are precipitated by the changing health conditions of the care receiver. Now, they describe these transitions using pie charts. And I think the pie charts are really intuitive. They're easy to understand. And so I'm going to share those pie charts here with you. So caregiving starts when a spouse is, you know, there's a historic relationship between, let's say it's a husband and wife. And instead of the word spouse here, let's just use the word wife. And being a wife to a husband, meaning to it, right? And the way that a wife interacts with her husband, the things that a wife does with her husband, they're all very distinct and singular to being a wife. Well, when the husband's health conditions start to emerge, the wife might start doing a few caregiving tasks and may not even really think about it at the time. It may not even be noticeable. It might just be like, oh, yeah, my husband forgot this or that, so I'll just take care of it. So the wife may not even think of herself as a caregiver in any way. It's just something that she starts doing. She starts doing some of these caregiving tasks, and this is phase one. In phase two, the caregiving tasks start to take more of the wife's time and activity and attention. And at this point, the wife starts to say, you know what, things are a little bit different now. I never used to do this stuff for my husband, but now I am. And, you know, I'll just keep going. It is what it is. But I'm starting to see that maybe there's a little bit of like caregiving stuff going on here. As the husband's needs increase, the caregiver role starts to crowd out the wife role, and the wife starts to realize, wow, I am as much a caregiver for this man as I am a wife. And the things that she's now doing for her husband are very caregiver oriented and not wifey things to do anymore. And we read some of those just when we were reading about the role of caregiver that you guys were talking about a few minutes ago. And the wife might even start to say to herself, well, who am I? Who am I in this relationship to this man? I mean, am I a wife or am I a caregiver? When adults start to recognize this, and they could start to feel very conflicted about it. The introduction of personal care, hygiene related assistance, when that happens in a caregiving relationship, the family caregiver really starts to question how much they could or should be doing this. And thoughts about institutional placement tend to increase during this phase. In phase four, the caregiving role crowds out the historic family relationship role. And the wife now realizes that she is more caregiver than wife in this relationship. Now, this can cause a significant amount of emotional distress, relationship change, and internal conflict and turmoil. Rhonda Montgomery uses a rubber band analogy to describe this. And I got a rubber band here. I'm just going to show it to you. So if here's a rubber band, I got my two thumbs. If this thumb is what you're actually doing in the relationship, and this thumb is what you think you should be doing in the relationship, if what you are doing and what you think you should be doing are very aligned, then there's not a lot of tension that you're feeling. But the further and further the gap is between what you are doing in the relationship and what you think you should be doing in the relationship, there's more and more tension and conflict. And this can create a role identity conflict for the family caregiver. The caregiver feels stressed, doesn't know what to do, just distressed, bitter, anguish. All of these feelings are very common for family caregivers, conflicted about the whole thing that's happening to them. So how does a family caregiver address this? Well, there are really three ways. Two of them have to do with redefining the relationship, and the third way has to do with offloading caregiving tasks. So the first way that a family caregiver might overcome this role identity conflict is basically saying to themselves, well, you know what? Being a wife to a man with fill in the blank, cancer, Parkinson's, you know, whatever the case may be, means that I'm not really a wife anymore. I've had this historic marital relationship with my husband, but now that he is sick and ill, that wife role is gone. I'm going to be a caregiver for him. I'm going to honor my historic relationship with him, but I'm just not going to be a wife anymore. I'm going to be a caregiver, and I am okay with that. I'm okay with that change. The second kind of mental change that could occur, a second way of dealing with this, would be for the wife to say to herself, you know what? My wife role has changed. My wife role now includes caregiving tasks. So I'm going to redefine what it means to be a wife today because of my husband's condition. And my wife role includes all of these things that I'm doing. And I'm going to think about being a wife differently. And I'm okay with that. So you think about in both of these ways of thinking differently about the role in the relationship, you have to be okay with it. It gets back to this, right? If you're not okay with it, then you're going to continue to have this emotional distress. The third way that family caregivers deal with the role identity conflict in their relationship is to outsource caregiving tasks to other people. So in this scenario, you may not be able to resolve that conflict. You may not be able to continue caregiving for your loved one, and that's okay. It doesn't make you, less of a wife. It doesn't mean that you love your spouse any less. It just means that you can't go through with it all the way to the end, and you need help. And when you outsource the tasks of caregiving, there results in kind of a rebalancing of this role within the relationship back to about phase 2. So maybe your loved one enters a facility, and that could be the most gut-wrenching decision that you've ever made in your life, but it's something that you need to do. And you realize by doing that, you're rebalancing your relationship with your loved one. You don't have to do all of the personal care tasks and the difficult things that were stressing you out. And you have a team of people in a facility that can help your loved one with those needs. And you can focus more on being a wife again and less a caregiver. Although you probably find that even if your loved one is in a facility, you never completely relinquish that caregiver role. You're always going to be doing that. One of the key parts to this is being okay with whatever way of resolving the role identity conflict that you take it will be. So you have to be okay with it. And it's a lot easier said than done, believe me. I took Rhonda Montgomery Kozlowski's role, family caregiver identity theory, and I applied it to paid caregivers as well. And paid caregivers have to go through a similar process of changing who they are in a relationship based on the evolving conditions of the care receiver. PCA here means personal care aid. And instead of spouse, we have the word companion. And instead of caregiver, we have the word personal care aid, which is more hands-on assistance with the care receiver's needs. Skilled medical professionals also go through something similar. When the patient is more well, the doctor tends to be more of a consultant. Oh, take 2 pills and call me in the morning, right? But when the patient's needs increase over time, the doctor becomes more and more of an actual provider, using hands-on treatments to help the patient get well. So I'd like to pause here again and ask you for your input. What is the impact of the caregiver role? The question is, yeah, she's saying she wanted me to repeat the question. So the question is, what is the impact of the caregiver role on your relationship? And so Laurel says, I have gotten to acceptance of the caregiver role, lowering any expectations of the spousal role. Very good. Richard says, ditto, Laurel, now a former. Patty says, married nearly 50 years, but have not felt or been wife for several years. Definitely his caregiver, full care. Dementia took the man I married, and he's not longer who he was, and neither am I. Diane says, other people need to do the physical part of the caregiving. I will have to be a wife in front of others, board and care. Not sure how his mental ability will affect. I have not seen him in 5.5 weeks. So today will be the first time since he went to the hospital, unsure. Wow, Diane, good luck. I will be thinking of you today as you see your husband for the first time in 5.5 weeks. Susan, no longer in a spousal role, totally a caregiver. Margaret, I'm irritated these days by the maid aspect. I find myself doing 100% when 90% should be enough. Nancy says, oh boy, Nancy says, I'm determined to continue the caregiver role, although I have to deal with episodes of stress, anxiety, frustration, and anger. I will not give him up. Rick, it means asking, how can we do this with adaptations over saying, I can't do this because my spouse can't do this. Barry, this is Barry. It's now father-child. Sad but true. Carol says, too many strokes took away so much of him. He does not feel any kind of emotion anymore. Hey, Jerry, can you read the chat for a minute? I got housekeeping knocking on my door. Hold on.
Yep. All right. So let's see. Too many strokes. From Susan, I'm in the middle of a huge internal struggle with this very issue. Mostly caregiver, but want to be the wife. Terry wrote, married 30 plus years and always a caregiver, but the past 4 years, I have become much more caregiver than spouse. I'm also the breadwinner, although today marks 1 year since I was laid off from full-time job and benefits. Stress level is high. We can all relate to that one. Others see that we have a good marriage, and we do, but they don't see the caregiving is lots of little things all the time. I'm tired of emptying urinals and worrying about his bowel movements. Yeah, I can relate to that, Amy.
Thank you.
Diane writes, I have had to do less dialysis, help from my mom since my husband got sick. I missed the coffee time with my mom. Edna wrote, impact is different at every stage of caregiving, resilient. And Suzanne wrote, I feel like I'm in a race against his disease progression. If I can just be a wife and mother until the kids are grown, I can shift the caregiver more wholeheartedly. I'm in a race to get a work role at home to make that balance better. And Letitia wrote, because I'm a caregiver, young for siblings, grandparents, then to my special needs child, I am now a caregiver to my spouse and never realized it through the relationship that small tasks become full tasks, and all while he's in denial and create tension. I fit myself in where I can still find balance.
So, I think that everybody here can probably relate to these comments. And Jerry, I'm wondering if it's possible. There's so many good insights here and thoughts. I'm wondering if it might be possible to just capture these the chat here and maybe send it out to the participants later to think about. I don't know if that's doable or not, but from a technology standpoint, but people might enjoy and benefit from reading these later. Just an idea.
I think we can.
Anna says,
I can definitely capture them. Whether I can get them to the people or not may be a different story, but I will do my best.
Anna says, I've had to learn to let go of just about everything and find contentment on what is left. Dolores says, I've taken on more tasks at work and find it very challenging and frustrating to find a balance between caregiving and work responsibilities. I actually do, in the book, there's a chapter on work, Dolores, that talks about some of those issues, and it's a very common challenge. So I was gonna pause here for a quick break, but let's just keep going. And some colleagues and I have created something called the Caregiver Transformation Retreat, and I just wanted to mention this to you. And it's something that we're going to try to offer virtually in the spring. You may recognize the person on the far right. That's Zachary White, and I think he was the keynote speaker at the Well Spouse Association conference last year, right, Bob?
That's right.
Or maybe it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Donna Thompson and Amanda LaRose are in the middle. And if you'd like to get more information about that, please reach out to me later. Oops. We're not going to take a break. We'll keep going. The third R in the framework for caregiving is realities. Here is the reality of caregiving. Caregiving is not sexy. You think about this, sexy roles, you might think about being an actor or being an actress, right? Being in Hollywood, that's a sexy thing to do. Well, in this play, being the actor in this play, it is not a sexy role. If you think about, who wants to be helping someone else with toileting and bathing and grooming and dressing? But even less sexy than being a caregiver is being a care receiver, being dependent on someone else for this type of help. Not sexy. I like to talk a little bit about this man. Most of you probably recognize him, Christopher Reeve, right? Superman. Here is the ultimate of human physicality, right? Strong and capable of doing anything. We know what happened to Christopher Reeve, right? In 1995, he fell off a horse in a tragic accident, and he became a quadriplegic. He spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And what a dramatic change for a man who used to be Superman. I like to think about this because in so many ways, this represents your care receiver. That person used to be Superman or Superwoman, probably took their body for granted. When you take your body for granted, you can get up and go out and you can conquer the world and do anything, right? And now, because of whatever health condition has arisen, you find yourself with diminished capacity, diminished ability to do things. And you may not be confined to a wheelchair like Christopher Reeve was, but you feel less than what you used to be and who you used to be. Christopher Reeve wrote a memoir called Still Me. And this is an observation that he made, and I can't read it. Bob, could you read that quote for us?
People often ask me what it's like to have been sustained a spinal cord injury and be confined to a wheelchair. Apart from all the medical complications, I would say the worst part of it is leaving the physical world, having to make the transition from participant to observer long before I would have expected.
Thanks, Bob. I really think this is a profound insight from Christopher Reeve when he talks about leaving the physical world and transitioning from participant to observer. You think about your care receiver, they're probably somewhere in that transition, or maybe they've already made the full transition, it sounds like from some of your comments. But being an observer in your own life can be an incredibly challenging thing. Another reality of caregiving is that caregiving causes you to confront marginalizing assumptions about the human body. If you look at this picture, right, this woman is in great physical shape. I mean, I don't know if you're able to do that, but she looks pretty good. I don't really look like that. But our society tells us, well, you're supposed to look like that. Well, most of us don't look like that. And certainly the care receivers that you are, the person that you're caring for doesn't look like that and can't ever probably do that again. Um, I like to, when I was had my home care company and was involved with training new caregivers, I like to talk a little bit about our cultural assumptions of the human body. And, you know, our culture teaches us that there are things that we talk about when it comes to the human body, and there are other things that we don't. So as you get older and health conditions start to enter into your life, you know, you might find that your eyes start to fail. And so what do? Well, you just go and you get glasses, right? Or maybe your heart fails and you have a heart attack and you go get triple bypass surgery. Maybe your kidneys fail, and what do? Well, you just get rid of one, right? Or your hip fails, and so you get a hip replacement. Or your knees fail and you get a knee replacement. I mean, all of these different body parts fail, and we receive medical attention for these things, and we talk about them. But there are two parts of the body that also fail that we do not talk about: the bladder and the bowel. Why don't we talk about those things? It's because of our cultural assumptions, our cultural taboos. You're not supposed to talk about that. Like when you're an adult, you don't talk about incontinence. But just like all those other parts of the body, the bladder and the bowel, they also fail. But because of our cultural taboos and our cultural assumptions about the body, we can't talk about that. It makes us feel embarrassed. It makes us feel marginalized, stigmatized. And when you are an adult and you are incontinent, it can make you feel less than human. It can rob you of your dignity. And folks, it should not be this way. I think that we, to help our care receivers retain their dignity, to feel human, we should just take it in stride and realize that, you know, the bladder and the bowel, they also fail, and it's okay. It's just part of life. It's part of aging. It's part of health conditions that emerge, and it's not a big deal. More about the realities of caregiving. Caregiving is hard, not just physically, but also emotionally. Physically, in caregiving, you're going to have to do tasks that you've never had to do before. All of the lifting associated with caregiving, moving your loved one, in helping them get in and out of bed, in and out of the wheelchair, in and out of the car to doctor's appointments. I mean, there's a reason why people who work in nursing homes have back injuries. It's a very common problem with people who are doing this type of work. But beyond the physical, there are also emotional challenges with caregiving. Caregiving role, it takes an emotional toll. Have you ever heard of emotional labor? Emotional labor is what happens when you regulate your emotions for the person that's in front of you. You suppress what you really feel and what you really think because you need to save face. You need to preserve the relationship with the person in front of you. So inside, you might want to just scream, you know, or you're just going crazy, but you just keep that all in check and make sure that, you know, you're doing the way that you're fulfilling your role the way that you should. There was a study of hospice workers, and the hospice workers in this study were found to have kind of a front stage and a backstage personality. Front stage, they were involved in the heavy work of emotional labor. When they were interacting with their patients and the patients' families, they presented with a very professional, compassionate, and loving approach to interaction with others. But then when they were privately away in the break room, away from patients and their families, they were much more detached about their work, almost calloused. They would crack jokes about their patients. And it's not to say that that was unprofessional, but it was their coping mechanism. It was their way of dealing with the harsh, difficult realities of their work. It was their way of managing the emotional labor that they had to go through every day. As a caregiver, you go through this. You know, when you're there with your care receiver, you're front stage. But then when you're backstage by yourself or away from others, you might just want to scream, pull your hair out. And it's very normal. It's a very difficult part of caregiving. More realities of caregiving, 2020. You know, you might have been a little more optimistic about 2020. Here we are in October, and a study came out from the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, which found that during COVID, now at this time, 83% of family caregivers are reporting increased stress. Reasons why: COVID, the concern about infection, the increased social isolation, less respite. Less respite means more responsibilities that the caregivers are taking on. And so all of this leads to increased stress for caregivers. So I'd like to pause again and ask you another question. What are the toughest realities that you are facing in caregiving today? And Jerry, could you maybe read the chat?
Sure. Nothing yet, I think. Yeah, nothing yet.
From Diane, I'm finding that I have emotional regulations for the hospital staff. They don't understand my emotional struggle. Calm down is not calming. From Barry. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, I was going to say, this is Barry. One of my biggest fears is, God forbid, I get sick, who will take care of me? And from Margaret, fear of catching it and passing it on to him. From Amy, the fact that caregiving will only end upon his death. From Lisa, I can't discuss our life problems with him, so I have to make all the decisions on my own. From Rick, sometimes it's necessary to be on too long without breaks. From Susan, as an older caregiver with my own physical limitations and unable to have in-home help, I am afraid that my husband will need a facility during COVID. From Carol, the loss of the dreams that we had for our retired life together. Scary that I need to stay healthy. I need to stay healthy, maybe. From Susan, I have a hard time sharing my feelings because I am much younger than many who are caregiving. From Laurel, having been through so many hospital visits and illnesses and being home all the time now, I am losing my ability to judge his normal, which is crummy, and he's really sick. From Diane, friends say that they will be there for me, but can't come in my home because of COVID. I wake up every morning and clean up after our rat infestation. I had back surgery maybe, in May, and could not do the rest I need because my husband would not or could not help. From Tom, it's me all the time, 24/7, with no one else here. There is a way I can bring in anyone, and if my wife gets COVID, it's bad, and it's worse if I get it. And people try to tell me what I should do, and as a result, I'm ending some friendships. From Suzanne, so hard to have people in my age relate. From Laurel, hi Suzanne, I'm younger too, there are many of us. From Nancy Floodberg, having enough time to do everything I want to do, accomplish, complete. From Marion, how quickly my husband went downhill and how hard it is to get help. From Anna, that he may outlive me and I won't ever be out of this situation. From Terry, trying not to treat him like a kindergartner even when his decision-making is unfocused. and trying not to be short with him when I am frustrated. Oh, from Diane McSweeney, neck. Okay. From Rick, will friends stick around when my spouse and I are busy caregiving? From Letitia, I feel many have labeled me as a codependent, and I actually am, just never asked for it. So family support is very limited. We caught COVID-19 and it was a scary time. So now I'm trying to put support in place for the future. From Nancy, we are no longer able to travel, which has always been one of my most important parts of our life and something to look forward to, missing it so much. From Rick, it can be a very lonely time. From Diane McSweeney, I thought 60 was young. From Linda, I can't vent to my husband about everything, trying to make the best decision for him, trying not to keep him safe from COVID, trying to not lose it for him and our adult kids, trying to handle insurance and doctors and his chemo decisions and so on. From Suzanne, keeping my game face on as his cognitive delay gets worse. From Diane, he is 63 and I am and will be in a board and care with him with 80-some and 104-year-old. From Dolores, our friends don't understand me or offer support. They knew us as a couple and can't seem to adapt to the new reality, so I'm not getting the support I need. From Laurel, another thing is what I owe. I paid my aides during this pandemic. They depend on the income we pay, but obviously we wish we didn't have to pay. From Linda, trying to, that is. From Marion, worried about having issues I need to address for myself, worrying about who will take care of him if he doesn't improve. From Diane, ditto to Laurel. From Susan, I feel very isolated, so many difficulties. COVID causes so many problems. I can't cope sometimes with his reactions and stay cheerful. But when I am upset, it makes him more upset. I always have to hide my real emotions if they are difficult ones.
So thank you, Jerry. I'm so impressed by your comments, and we're not able to hear each other speak, but I think just the words alone, you can sense the raw honesty and the struggle that all caregivers are feeling. And thank you for sharing those thoughts and reality. So having gone through, here's a question. Can you use a little help? I'd like to suggest that if the answer to that is yes, as you think about that question, I want to assure you that it's okay for you to be the star of the show once in a while. What do I mean by that? Well, sometimes caregivers can become care receivers too. Who helps? Well, here's a list of people that are in a position to be able to help you. And as you asked yourself that question earlier, can I use a little help myself? If you're being honest with yourself and you know that the answer to that is yes, I would urge you to seek help. A lot of times family caregivers feel like they have to do this alone, and you don't have to do it alone. You can get help with the tasks of caregiving from other people. You can also get help for yourself with the emotional support that you need. And these are some great ways that you can do that. But do not ignore your own needs. They talk about self-care. The term self-care has kind of emerged as a buzzword, but it just means that, you have other people that are depending on you, and you need to be your best self to be able to care for them And as you meet your own needs, you're going to be a better caregiver as well. I'm going to skip that slide. Let's go to the next R, which is rewards. Claire Stacy points out that in the book, there's actually a chapter on rewards, and caregiving uncovers a lot of deep rewards in life. A lot of the research on caregiving focuses on the burden, on the stress, on the challenge of caregiving. But very little attention has been placed on the rewards of caregiving. And people who go through the caregiving role find a lot of new rewards, unexpected rewards in the process. And I'd just like to share with you a couple of quick stories about this. I was calling bingo for a group at a facility where we had a number of clients, and one of those was a 101-year-old man, Mr. Mitchell, who I grew very fond of. But Mr. Mitchell was playing bingo, and he was sitting in the front of the room right where I was calling bingo, and he was not winning. And I wanted Mr. Mitchell to win. So I was trying to call the numbers that were on his card. I was actually looking at his bingo card and trying to see if I could extract the right numbers. And after about the fourth or fifth game, I called the last number, and somebody in the back said bingo, and Mr. Mitchell lost again. And he really wanted that Hershey bar that you get when you win bingo. And so I looked down at Mr. Mitchell and I said, "Well, Mr. Mitchell, you were close." And his response was, "Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades." And, I laughed, but he's right. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And I quote Mr. Mitchell often. That was a little lesson that I learned from him. Here's another thing that I learned from a care receiver. This was Mrs. Dovell. And at 95 years old, she painted this picture. 95 years old, and she was able to paint that picture. I bought it from her, and was just so impressed that at 95, she still had the dexterity and the ability to produce something like that. I find that very inspiring. And even when your care receiver is down and has diminished capabilities, they still have things to offer the world, don't they? And they have things to offer us in our relationships. A lot of family caregivers say, this is some of the greatest things about being a caregiver. You can learn from the care receiver. When you're taking care of someone at end of life, you can learn a lot about living by being close to a person who is dying. A lot of caregivers report that they are confident that their loved one is receiving the best possible care because they are providing that themselves. Caregivers find a greater sense of purpose and meaning in life because of what they're doing. Caregiving teaches you to be a better human being. It teaches us to love better. And as we love better, we also are able to receive love better. A lot of people report that caregiving enhances relationships. There's an ability to understand and be there for one another selflessly. So I'd like to ask you another question. What are some of the rewards that you have found in your caregiving journey? And Jerry, can you read those? Oops. Sorry.
Yeah, I got it. Said, from Amy, I'm going through a very tough time, a rough time at work, and my IS has been such an amazing support. He still has his full cognitive ability, and he's great to talk to. From Laurel, my relationships with others are much deeper. We talk about the important things, and I can sit with people in grief and pain and listen.
Laurel, that's a profound thing to learn through caregiving. Sometimes the only thing that we can offer people is to just be there, just to listen. And you can't change life for your care receiver. You can't change their condition. There's so many things that you might want to change, but maybe the best that you have to offer is to just be there and to listen.
Lawrence says, can't think of any except the pure friends that I have made. That's along the lines of what I was thinking. I've made lifelong relationships in the caregiving, in the well spouse community, and that's a very valuable reward.
I agree. Can't stress that enough. All right, so from Diane, we held hands at the store. We are a cute older couple. No one knows that only I am, wait a minute, hold on a minute, it just scrolled past me. No one knows that not only am I holding his hand because I love him, but to support his walking in when he could walk. All right, from Laurel, I also reoriented my life goals. I know what's important now, and it's not the next dollar or promotion or reward. From Suzanne, I have found that by helping others in their journey, it helps me a little bit more each day. It makes me realize that we are being groomed for this awesome responsibility. From Linda, my kids and I spent uninterrupted quality time with my husband while he was in the hospital. From Nancy, Flo, something or other, the opportunities afforded by recognizing you to get to choose how to be in the moment and by nourishing resilience. From Diane, the friend I helped in college was always there when I was going through emotional stuff as a college kid. From Margaret, we are closer. His refusal to do anything before his stroke about his health problems made me very angry, but I've seen his bravery since then. From Edna, found purpose in life, invites frequently come to speak and share about caregiver burden. From Diane, my mom is there for me emotionally now. From Terry, I found an extra level of resourcefulness and empathy in myself, and I more appreciate the days my spouse feels up to putting together dinner, even if that is just reheating leftovers and washing those dishes. From Richard, I found out that I am not controlling, just aggressively helpful. Well, spouse friends are the greatest. From Lisa, increased empathy for my husband and for other caregivers. It has also taught me to pay it more attention and be grateful for our good moments. Susan, I have grown in my ability to communicate and understand my own emotions, and I've learned a ton about PTSD and how your brain works. From Susan Ald, I pay attention better and appreciate the ordinary things in our day. From Carol, I think this has brought me closer to God than I already was. Talking to him has helped me accept where I am. It makes me feel good when he tells others that he couldn't survive without me. From Laurel, oh yes, Susan, good one about my own emotions. From Dolores, I'm learning to appreciate the good times when we still have when we still do have, and to really enjoy doing a few positive things with him every day. It doesn't always happen, but I try. Honestly, having too hard a time right now to see the rewards, from Marion, I know they are there, but feeling overwhelmed is stronger than feeling the rewards. From Amy, Marion, sending virtual hugs. From Patty Lawrence, learning that I can do things I never thought I could do. From Jenny, what is the name of the book you just talked about?
It's When Caregiving Calls by Dr. Aaron Blight.
Okay, next is from Letitia. I realized it's a gift for me to be a caregiver. I've learned many examples of humility and patience at now 45, and feel I have a lot to offer others with understanding now through listening to others. From Marion, I do believe my awards await me in heaven. From Jenny Simpson, I've learned about listening skills, patience, my husband's condition, stroke.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for all of those great comments. I would like to say one thing about Marion's observation. There were a couple of other comments that were along these lines, that it's so hard in the throes of adversity and in the middle of your greatest trials. It's hard to see where the blessings are, where the rewards are. And sometimes it's not until it's over that you start to really appreciate and understand. The point that I was making is simply that sometimes it's not until your caregiving is finished that you actually have the ability to reflect upon what has happened in your life and recognize some of the rewards that have emerged, even during the most adverse time of your life, potentially. Okay, let me get back to this. So, years ago, I was looking for a Christmas present for the caregivers that work for our company. And I came across this little memento. It's a little pewter pin that is the hand with a heart inside of it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that totally represents the type of care that we'd like to provide with Home Instead, with our company. And instead of making it a Christmas present, I created a little award for caregivers in our company. And I took that pewter pin and I made these little cards and attached it to a card like this, and invited people to nominate deserving caregivers for the award. And our first nomination came in. It was for a woman named Gloria. And Gloria was a fantastic caregiver. And my HR person came to me and said, well, we got a nomination for this award. It was Gloria. I said, that was great, And we decided to invite Gloria to come into the office to receive her award. And so she did one day, and I didn't really plan on doing this. I hadn't even honestly thought too much about how we were going to do it, but my HR person came in and said, Gloria's here to receive her award. And I said, well, let's call a meeting. So I went around the office and we all gathered, everybody who was there, we gathered in this circle around Gloria. And I had a letter from the daughter of Gloria's client, who she was taking care of. And the daughter wrote in her letter the reasons why Gloria was such an exceptional caregiver. And Gloria stood next to me, and I said, today we gather here to honor Gloria. Gloria is a fantastic caregiver. And let me tell you what the daughter of Gloria's client said about her. And I simply read the words from the client's daughter from the letter. And I turned and looked at Gloria, and she was crying. And Gloria started to say how much she loved working here. And the office staff who had gathered started to talk about how much they loved Gloria and appreciated her work. And the office staff was now crying, and pretty soon I was crying. And it was just an incredible experience. And this began the Hand and Heart Award within my company, and it kind of became institutionalized. We gave hundreds of these to caregivers over the years, and we always did it the same way. We would gather in a circle and we would honor and celebrate the work of this deserving caregiver. So later, as I started to after I sold my company and started to do some speaking, I thought about this and decided that, wow, maybe we can do this in speaking as well. And it was so much fun that we started doing it here. And you know what? We're going to just award one of these today. So Edna, Edna's on the call, right? Well, Edna Culp for a Caregiving Kinetics Hand and Heart Award. And Bob says that through Edna's extraordinary efforts, she's established her group in San Diego, California, where there was none. Then she held a conference for one Saturday, which attracted over 50 people, many of whom signed up for WellSpouse membership. Her symposium was hailed for its content and excellent speakers. It also featured a small luncheon. Edna is also now responsible for the formation of 2 groups in Central and Northern California. She's worked tirelessly to advance the cause of WellSpouse in California. She represents WellSpouse Association with the highest standards and is the example of a caregiver wife and mother everyone praises. WellSpouse is far better off because of Edna and her tireless efforts. Edna is truly worthy of this award. Bob, is there anything that you'd like to say about Edna?
Edna is single-handedly responsible for all the good that's going on in WellSpouse in California. And Edna, you're very, very deserving of this award. And I'm just so proud to nominate you for it.
So Edna, I have your address here, and when I get back to my home next week, I'm going to be mailing this to you. It'll show up in an envelope, and it'll look just like this. And congratulations. And Edna, is there anything that you would like to share with the group? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Hold on, Edna. I'm muted.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Diane says, I am clapping, Edna. I am new, and your email to me made me feel comfort. And oh, wait, above that, Lisa says, I attended the San Diego conference. Well done, Edna. Patty says, yes, Edna, her energy is contagious. What a wonderful presence. And WellSpouse, congratulations. Linda says, congratulations, Edna.
Edna cannot
So
speak.
thank you, Edna.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is unexpected. Thank you so much. I attended the conference, my first conference in 2017, and it was the lowest. I think I hit rock bottom at that time. And when I got there, I felt like being home, going home. So this is so active in the East Coast, and I realized, why don't we have this in the West Coast? Therefore, I made a commitment to myself to bring WellSpouse to the West Coast. And that has been the driving force behind all the work that I am doing, because I know that there are so many people out here just like me and just like the rest of us needing this kind of support. So that's why we all do this. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Edna.
Thank you, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. So we've talked about roles, relationships, realities, and rewards. And I like to think about this as the social framework of caregiving, because all of these things impact our caregiving experience. They affect who we are as caregivers, but the caregiving itself affects how we think of roles, relationships, realities, and rewards in our lives. So it's this kind of reflexive relationship between caregiving and all of these things that make up the social context of caregiving. And again, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, there's always so much focus on the physical tasks of caregiving that we really don't think about the social context of what we're doing. But when we focus on the social context of caregiving and we think about these things on a deeper level, we can start to understand what caregiving is doing to us in our relationships, in our world, and we can do a better job as caregivers because of that. Well, you might say, Yeah, it's great. It's helpful to know about the social dynamics of caregiving, but what about all those physical requirements of caregiving as well? And I thought about this question and I was trying to come up with another R word that would encapsulate the physical requirements of caregiving. And I came up with this word, readiness. So this would be the fifth R in the framework of caregiving. Readiness encompasses your ability to meet the tasks of caregiving and to perform them effectively. Are you ready to do what needs to be done for your loved one when your loved one needs care? And how do you develop your readiness? There was a study of a dementia care unit in Australia from a scholar named Paul Hager. And in this dementia care unit, there were aides who they had not received any kind of formal training on dementia care, didn't have a medical background at all, but they developed readiness to care for their residents through a process that they called showing, guessing, and trying. Showing, guessing, and trying allowed them to figure out how to best meet the needs of their care receivers. In other words, this was a process of trial and error. It was practice. And as they practiced interacting with their care receivers, again, people with moderate to severe dementia, they developed skills and they developed the ability to meet their needs. They developed a readiness to be caregiver. And this is how you, as a caregiver, enhance your skills and your abilities to meet the physical requirements of caregiving. You weren't trained to do this. It was just thrust upon you because of the health conditions of your loved one. So how do you figure out how to do it? It's trial and error. You make mistakes along the way. You fumble. You realize that what you just tried, it didn't work. So you try a different approach. And eventually, you'll be in tune with your loved one's needs and know how to best meet those needs. So here's another question for you. What is a caregiving task? And this is maybe just one example. Caregiving task, which thanks only to practice, you're now ready to do. It might be, making an occupied bed. It might be insulin monitoring. It could be moving your loved one from the bed to the commode. What's something that just through practice you're now ready to do as a caregiver? Laurel says, I'm a hospital ER visit expert. Grab the med list, run through all his conditions, answer the questions. Sounds like you can just rattle that off, Laurel. I have a physical limitation making this hard. That's it from Diane. Patty, change those awful adult diapers. Yeah. Ginny, cleaning my husband up. Yeah, it's a little different than cleaning up an infant, isn't it? Diane, advocate, talking to doctors. Matt says, cooking. I couldn't boil water when we met. Now I do 100% of the cooking. Linda, monitoring my husband's oxygen and knowing what to look for with that. Laura's laughing at Matt. Congratulations, Matt. That's a life skill, cooking. Maybe at a future well spouse meeting, Matt could prepare a meal for everybody. That would be pretty funny. Pretty cool. Patty, asking for help when I need it. Dolores learned all about a host of medical I knew nothing about 3 to 4 years ago. Susan says, Patty, you're a rock star. Diane, I found that if I sit, I can help my mom husband put shoes and socks on. Alan, making sure her SP tube isn't pinched. Lisa, helping him with his mobility difficulties. Alan's suprapubic tube, yep. Terry, adjusting our menus to things that don't adversely affect his digestive system. Lots of trial and error, right? Lots of practice and becoming ready to be a caregiver. And it's an ongoing process, isn't it? Whatever your loved one's condition is today, it's going to probably change tomorrow, and you're going to have to adapt. And so caregiving is this constant process of adaptation to your loved one's evolving physical conditions. So when we think about the framework of caregiving, this slide really encapsulates everything that we've talked about today. Understanding the roles, honoring the relationships that are inherent in caregiving, confronting the realities of caregiving. You know, you might want to avoid, you might want to diminish, but by tackling these challenges head on, you're going to be doing a better job as a caregiver and understanding the realities of caregiving better. Cultivating the rewards, seeking the rewards in caregiving. One thing that I like to do is invite caregivers to keep a gratitude journal. It might seem a little bit ironic. Why would I keep a gratitude journal? Well, the reason is by doing that, if you just take a moment each day to think about something that you're grateful for, I
think we lost.
And then finally
again.
practicing for readiness,
back.
enabling you to be there and deliver on your loved one's healthcare needs. And if you put all of this together, this framework, it really leads to something called resilience, which is the last R in the framework. By thinking about caregiving this way, approaching caregiving with all of these things, a caregiver can develop resilience, which is the ability to bounce back in adverse conditions, the ability to step and do what needs to be done and respond to the challenges that are ahead. Pick yourself, get down, you pick yourself up and you keep going, right? That's resilience. So caregivers who can approach caregiving in this manner are more resilient and more successful in caregiver role. I didn't understand any of this stuff when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. I just fumbled through it, and I didn't do a very good job, if I'm being honest with you. If I was to be a caregiver for her today, I know that I would do a better job, but I don't have that opportunity. She's gone. That's why I am here today to share with you and talk to you a little bit about your experience, and in the hopes that you'll do a little bit better job thanks to the things that we've talked about here today. The book that we've talked about is When Caregiving Calls, Guidance as You Care for a Parent, Spouse, or Aging Relative. Book Life Reviews selected it as an editor's pick and said that this outstanding guide will be a lifesaver for anyone saddled with these immense responsibilities and seeking peace of mind. And just to give you a little flavor of the book, I mentioned that it's organized into 18 chapters. And here are the titles of all 18 chapters. You can see that they all touch upon things that are very relevant and relatable in caregiving situations, either for the caregiver or the care receiver, or both. And Publishers Weekly, I didn't even know this, they have this publication called First Lines, and it showed up in August 2020. The first line of my book showed up as Best First Lines by Publishers Weekly. That's the first line of the book. I didn't even know, it just showed up and I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. As we close, I'd like to just say thank you for what you do as a family caregiver. You may not feel like you're recognized, but you are seen. I know what it's like to go through what you're going through, and you make a difference every day in the life of your loved one. And you should be commended for your selfless service and your love and devotion to your partner. So I'd like to hear what you think beyond our little time here today. Like I said, I'm on Twitter. I've got this new author Facebook page. I can't say that without laughing. Sorry. I'm on LinkedIn. So if I'd love to hear your thoughts about the presentation today, or what you heard, what you think, what you feel, how you've, you know, responded to it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So please share those with me. And we've got a few minutes left here, and I'll be happy to hear any comments or any questions.
Well, I think Dr. Blight, I think we're just about out of time. We're expecting our next speaker at 12 o'clock, and we've got to let some of these people take a little bit of a break. Please let me encourage everyone to contact Dr. Blight and let him have your questions and discussion, and I'm sure he'll be glad to correspond with you. You have the addresses there on the screen. And Dr. Blight, I want to thank you so much for being our keynote speaker and being here today. I think you did an outstanding job. I really appreciate all you do for Well Spouse. It's because of people like you that Well Spouse can put on a program like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Jerry. And thank you all for spending time with me today. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed your comments and hearing your candid responses to all of those questions.